Welcome everybody to another episode of the Padawan. Today this is part of our Clone Wars special segments, special episodes, and we're going to be discussing the first arc of the Clone Wars, which is the first 3 episodes of season 7.
Yep.
So recently, was it On the Wings of the Keeradaks? Is that how you say it?
Was that the last one? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, so that On the Wings of the I'll just say the Keeradaks. I'm probably completely wrong, but that was just released this past Friday, so we wanted to encompass all 3 episodes together and review them as one arc rather than breaking down each episode, which most of them run between 18 and 25 minutes.
Yeah, and we talk about them on the full podcast. So
yeah, so first off, Ollie, what'd you think of the first arc of season 7 so far?
Yeah, I liked it. Bad Batch is fun. It's kind of like just a little bit more like your typical hero group up thing, like the Avengers or something. You know what I mean? The Bad Batch is like I saw Matt Martin from the story group compare it to the Ninja Turtles. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like each one kind of has their own specialty and they're a team. So it was fun. It was cool to see them in action. And it was cool to see Rex and Cody a little bit. And then obviously the overall story arc was kind of rescuing Echo, a clone that had been left for dead, and the Separatists took him and kind of ran tests on him. And I think the gist of it was they were winning a bunch of battles because they had basically hacked into that clone's mind and were kind of predicting what Rex would do or what all of them would do in battle strategy because he was on Rex's team. So they were able to stay one step ahead most of the time, right? That was basically the overall gist. So yeah, it was neat. It was an interesting take. This is why I really like the Clone Wars, right? Because like in the movies, it just kind of gets swept as like, all right, Clone Wars, Revenge of the Sith. You know what I mean? Like you don't actually get any of the wars. So this really brings to light all the different things that were going on and different missions and different factions. You get to learn a little bit more about the Techno Union, which is cool because they're kind of a throwaway in Revenge of the Sith. You know what I mean? But they're a big part of the Confederate of Independent Systems, the CIS, which are the Separatists. And so, yeah. What did you think overall?
I liked the first episode a lot. The last 2 episodes, not so much. I shouldn't say I didn't like them. I thought it was good overall. It was fun watching. It's a fun watch.
Yeah.
But I just, I didn't think. I felt the last 2 episodes were definitely filler to me, and the
last 2 episodes were 1 episode.
Yeah.
It could have been. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it didn't. It kind of like it's kind of like how Mandalorian started, where you had the first episode, which kind of laid the foundation.
Yeah.
Then you had
some filler.
The second episode is part 2 to that. So it was kind of the same thing to me with episodes 2 and 3. I like the action. I like the Bad Batch. I mean, I love the characters and and I think I mentioned on our regular podcast that I really enjoy that. I like that they came up with something different for that clone squadron. But I was kind of expecting a little bit more in terms of story, but towards the end of episode 3, you kind of get to see there could be something there.
Yeah, I mean, I get the same feeling, and I think I chalk it up mostly to that these were written to come out right after, you know what I mean? Like all to be in sequence. So I think it's more the fact that we're all hyped for because it's been so many years, you know what I mean? And we already have future storylines through Rebels and you know what I mean? So in other words, we already kind of know everything after it. So most big fans are really just not that they're not hyped for this, but they're really hyped for the whole Siege of Mandalore end of Order 66 kind of thing, right? So it's not that I think these episodes only suffer from the fact that we've waited so long and that's really what we're waiting for. But this is good, clean Clone Wars. This is what made the Clone Wars good. In other words, what I'm trying to say is when we go back and we watch it as a whole later and they're all together out, this will feel very much a part of, you know what I mean? Like just the next episode's another arc, you know?
Yeah.
So I think I agree with you. I feel that fillerness kind of thing that you're saying, but I think that's, for me at least, I think that's more because I'm so excited about what's coming next that these just feel like, okay, we're just getting warmed up. When really they're actually pretty good overall on the Clone Wars scale. You know what I mean? It was a good episode. It pulled a lot of different things. You know what I mean? Like I said, we got the Techno Union, we got their kind of homeworld, Skako Minor. We got some new versions of droids. We got kind of, you know what I mean? We got Rex, we got Cody, we got them rescuing Echo, which goes back to the Citadel scenes, episodes or arc, which this almost kind of, in a way, copied that, right? Like they broke into a thing to get someone out and then had to escape. So it's kind of mirroring that. So I thought the arc was excellent as a whole. But I think it does suffer from the fact that we're just waiting for what comes after this. You know what I mean? So it was kind of unfair in a way. But I like the Bad Batch overall, I think.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what they do with them too. I mean,
right. Yeah.
Presumably we think that, I don't know if you've read anything else, but I'm going to assume they probably either die or, something.
It's a good question happens, for them to come in this late. Yeah. What happens in Order 66? Because if we were doing this before, like if the Clone Wars came out in sequence, right? And we were doing this before Revenge of the Sith or even after Revenge of the Sith, but before Rebels, I would say Bad Batch would be a good starting point for clones that didn't have the inhibitor chip, the Order 66, the chip that made them all do it. Like they would be the ones that I would think may turn on the Empire and not go, because they were like custom made, you know what I mean? So, but seeing how we've already had Rebels and we've already had this kind of stuff, I think that probably they just, I don't know that we'll have any official. Maybe they'll write a novel. Maybe they maybe they go rogue and get killed off later or something. But
yeah, I mean, they were definitely, obviously they were the highlight of that arc. I mean, it's just, you get Rex back, you get which, by the way, I don't know. Anakin, the voice actor of Anakin, I almost prefer that voice over Hayden Christensen. Like, it sounds more mature, whereas Hayden Christensen sounds like a whiny.
It's weird to say because, again, it's the movies and real life versus cartoon and stuff, but Anakin in the Clone Wars as a whole feels more like someone who could turn into Darth Vader than Anakin in Clone Wars, right?
Right.
I don't think Hayden did a bad job. I think at the end of Revenge of the Sith, I think is good. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's more writing than acting at the end of the day. But yeah, I agree with you. I think this Anakin seems darker already, right?
Right. Yeah, you can just
and
see,
he's not there yet, but like you can see this character turning into Vader much more than the Anakin in the movies. But that's why, honestly, this is what we've talked about too. I was never a big, and I'm still not like a huge cartoon person. It's just not my thing. But the Clone Wars is really good for Star Wars. Like if you're into Star Wars lore and don't care if it's comic or this, you just want the best stories. The Clone Wars cartoon is just excellent.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
As a whole, there is like any show, there's bad episodes or whatever. But as a whole, story wise, I think it just connects. It connects and answers so many questions, and I think truly enhances the prequels.
I think I agree. I think it enhances the prequels and the stories. There's so much lore that it introduces that for anything coming out now references a lot of the stuff that was introduced in the show.
Yeah.
And it also does a good job where it's not. I still have a little bit of a problem with maybe like the books or like other content cleaning up questions that are in the movies, and I'll get to more of that. But like I find that Clone Wars doesn't do that as much. It doesn't, like, with some things it does, and obviously the Clone Wars is basically the detailed version of what happened in the second movie, the second prequel. But it doesn't like take the questions that you have in those movies and just answer them in the show. Like, it just builds off of that content. It's different. It gives you more, which I like that kind of approach rather than it's like, oh, we're gonna have this cartoon which is gonna answer all of your questions.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be honest, that's mostly because George Lucas wrote that whole thing.
Right.
So, and he was a big part of, writing Clone Wars and stuff. So that, I mean, it's all coming from the same mind. And that's what me and you both complain about in the sequel trilogy, even though I really like the sequel trilogy, but still, it didn't come from one mind. So it is scattered, you know what I mean? Whereas this suffers less from that kind of thing because in reality, the whole story, including the movies and this cartoon, all came from one guy's mind and then were pieced together by others. You know what I mean? Yep. But the general structure. And I think that's why it feels that way, because it feels like it's all the same,
Yeah, and like I said, it's not taking anything from the movies and be like, oh, that's why this was in the movies. It's like its own thing. It's just it's which I like. I like that it's kind of separate. Rebels kind of does the same thing too.
Yeah.
It's separate from the movies. I mean, it goes into more details, but it doesn't go like, oh, this is why this happened in A New Hope.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't answer those questions. It's just like, it has a lot of details that could impact the movies, but it's not
right,
like straight up answers. And I think, I don't know. I just I prefer that. And it helps, like you said, the writing comes from the same mind. It's all cohesive. It's not, and I think Disney, I mean, it looks like they're taking a good step with the High Republic stuff. So hopefully they get back into that groove where they're getting all their content, cohesive content across all channels rather than having all this scatterbrain stuff.
Yeah. So what did you think? I noticed that I thought it was pretty neat that they kind of added on to the lore of the Techno Union, which were with the banking clan and the other things as part of the the separatists, let's just call them. This guy, Wat Tambor, is at the end when Anakin goes to Mustafar and kills all the leaders. I feel like the movies you never really completely understand that unless you're paying really close attention, that the separatists are this other group that have a bunch of different groups coming together, kind of like a republic, just they weren't the part of the republic. And I think the movies don't explain that very well. And Clone Wars gets a little bit more into that there's a different side, right? They're not just bad guys. And the interesting thing is when you completely understand the whole thing, a lot of them weren't even bad guys. They were being played by Palpatine. So they got sucked into it just the same. They just ended up on the other side against the Jedi at the time, So I found it a little bit interesting, and I found it cool that they got into the Techno Union here, which I always thought that Wat Tambor design was kind of cool. So you got to see their home world, and I think it kind of it made sense, right? Because sometimes in Star Wars the fun stuff is like the new droids or new ships and stuff like that, and sometimes it doesn't work because it feels shoehorned in. And sometimes it takes a little bit of explaining, like a lot of people will immediately say, well, why are there only like X-Wings and Y-Wings when 20 years before there were all these fancy fighters? And it's like, well, the galaxy collapsed and the Republic, and then the people flying those X-Wings are like rebels. So, a lot of it does make sense. But these at first I was like, what? And then kind of after I saw the episodes and let it sink in, these new like battle droids that were look like raptors almost. At first I was like, why do they have to be different? Like, are they just doing this for no reason? But then it started to make sense as I realized, it's the Techno Union's world. They're all about tech and stuff. And then when they flew at the end, they had a purpose for being like that. Because at first I was just like, what is the purpose of them looking like that? You know what I mean? Because it was just like, why? It doesn't seem like they function any better. But then when they flew, it made sense. They had that cool thing that cut through the doors that were going after them when they were trying to unplug Echo, the Decimator that had the purple lightning. And then they had those flying, Anakin called them walkers. They look a lot like the things from earlier in the Clone Wars, the Battle of Christophsis. They have a big ball on their head and they have multiple cannons that shoot. but these like flew too. So it seems almost like the Techno Union, they were kind of giving you a little background that they may have been like the ones that were advancing the technology of the droids, which I think is kind of cool. You know what I mean? They didn't say that, but that's the vibe I got. You know what I mean? That these guys were on the front end of technology, which makes sense, right? I mean, it's kind of, I like that little stuff.
Yeah, and I think that just furthers my point of that this this show dives into the details, but doesn't.
It's not over. Yeah, no one had to say, "Hey, we're the front. We always create all the new stuff." You just kind of have to read into it, and it's there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So So I think I thought it was interesting too. I mean, I know what the only thing with the Federation is that, I mean, obviously the name is Federation, so there's going to be tons of groups and planets that are involved in the Federation. So, I mean, you should know that it's not just like one group that you see throughout the movies. There's
right, but the Trade Federation isn't the Separatists necessarily. There's more than that. But I'm saying they make it seem like, if you watch the movies and don't pay super close attention, it just kind of seems like the Trade Federation just is the Separatists, and they're just bad guys that are just out to destroy the Republic, when that's not really what's going on. Like, they use the Trade Federation to convince the CIS to form and go against the Republic, but they're not evil. Like you see in the Clone Wars, like Ahsoka's friend, I'm drawing a blank on his name. But anyways, you see like different people that are like senators for the Separatists. You know what I mean? So they have their own thing. That doesn't really get brought out, I feel like, in the movies. It just seems like bad guy. You know what I mean? And it's like, well,
yeah.
And they put it as the face of the droids, but the droids aren't the Separatists. Does that make sense? Like what the Separatists use. So it's just interesting.
Yeah, I think
I like the Clone Wars for that. It gives more background. Yeah.
Yeah, and the movies can't really. I mean, that's one thing I would say the movies can't really dive into, because that's just a whole different.
They could have done a little more. I mean, they show some of the leaders a couple times, but they don't really get into it. It just makes them look like an evil council, not like a full government. You know what I mean? Or governing body, which is fine. I mean, like you're saying, the movies need to move forward. There's actually a lot of exposition in the movies, in the prequels, like almost too much, a lot of people think. So like I get it, but the Clone Wars does a really good job, I think, of giving that other side of it. That's what we had talked about. I don't mean to get off topic, but that's what I was hoping for Cassian, because he grew up in a separatist world, in a separatist system. So I was hoping the show would go back a little bit further and show him, like, pitch him as the good guy.
Yeah.
And the Republic as the bad guys, just to give you a different view that like all separatists weren't, or even the separatists in general weren't necessarily bad. You know what I mean? They were getting played. So yeah. And the Republic, you're right. I mean, but that's kind of the thing that I typically glaze over to when I think of, when I go back and look, and these episodes do a good job of reminding you that it was well written. It wasn't good guy, bad guy. You know what I mean? Or it was. It just, the bad guy was running the whole show. So the whole bad guy, good guy armies that you were told to believe, really nobody was a good guy. You know what I mean? Nobody was a bad guy. Nobody was a good guy.
And see, people shit on the prequels, yet you look at the sequel trilogy and compare it to the prequel trilogy in terms of writing, and it's just
anybody with any idea and has followed Star Wars can shit on the prequels for like the writing of like the dialogue and stuff and the cheesiness, and if you want to get into the over the top graphics and stuff, but that's also what George Lucas did in the originals. It just, they didn't have that kind of CGI. But I don't find many people shitting on the prequels for the story, because I think that was pretty freaking well done. Like the overall path of it. So
yeah, and if you had no idea what was going on too, I mean, like, if you didn't know if you watched it from episode 1, like say you were just a newbie and you started from episode 1, I'd be interested to see how the
plot twist is kind of crazy. That's what I always say. Like, it'd be interesting to watch it without knowing that Anakin turns into Vader and Palpatine's the Emperor. You know what I mean? Like all that kind of stuff that you knew was coming in the prequels almost ruined. That may be a better twist than the Vader thing, because the Vader thing just came out of nowhere. They didn't even have that written at first. You know what I mean? Whereas he wrote the whole Palpatine thing, which is a really neat thing. You know what I mean? I have to go back and watch. When you watch the prequels with Brenna, let me know when because obviously we knew Palpatine was going to be the Emperor. I wonder when it starts to become obvious, because in the first movie it's definitely not. You know what I mean? He's just kind of like, oh, well, watch your career with much interest. You know what I mean? Like none of it seems that evil. But
he doesn't have a big role in the first one.
Yeah, is it Clone Wars where he talks about Darth Plagueis the Wise, or is that all the way in
Revenge of the Sith? No, Revenge of the Sith is where you start to see Palpatine
really go.
Yeah. I mean, there's certain things in like. It's tough because in Attack of the Clones, you kind of have an idea that at
someone's
that point
pulling the strings. Well, you think it's Dooku, right? But you know Dooku's talking to someone.
Point, yeah.
It'd be interesting to see if it's obvious, because you never. What I'm trying to say is we already knew it, so I didn't pay attention to if they made it obvious. You know what I mean?
Right.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Because maybe it is obvious. Maybe right away in Phantom Menace, you can tell it's him on the screen with Maul, but I doubt it.
I don't think so. I think it's Clone. We'll have to watch Attack of the Clones. Once we get to that, I'll let you know and see if she picks up on it. So,
anyways, we're getting a little off topic, but first arc overall thoughts. Closing thoughts. What do you got?
Well, if we're gonna rate it, I'd probably give it 6.5, 7 out of 10. Probably in that range. I mean, it was good overall, not great.
I'm right.
I thought it was a fun.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
I'm
right at like B. Yeah. So probably 6.5.
It was a solid arc, but just felt a little filler to me. And it's just it's Clone Wars has a lot of that. I shouldn't expect I'm kind of expecting from the season that there's going to be the big grand finales, obviously, because what happens with a lot of this stuff, but like to be able to see it is really cool. But like I also didn't expect filler either on some of that level, but it's not bad. It was a good, it just wasn't great to me.
Yeah.
Going forward, I can't wait to see more Ahsoka and Anakin. I mean, just seeing those interactions and everything, like obviously we know where Anakin's going, so kind of curious. And the Bad Batch, if they turn in Order 66 or not. That's my other question.
Yeah, so I'd go a little higher, like 7.5, only because I think it's because I'm so excited about the rest of the season that this seems like I'm kind of like, all right, on to the next one. But when I kind of put it in context of all Clone Wars, I think this was slightly better than your average arc, so I put it at like 7.5, because it does have some tie-ins to other arcs. It furthers the Techno Union. It's got the Bad Batch, was a little more unique. So I think when you look at the seasons as a whole, if you were rating all the arcs, I think this is a little bit better than your average arc. But I agree with you that it does. I feel like I'm rushing it through my head because I'm so excited for the meat of the season. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's a little bit unfair to the arc as a whole, but it is what it is. So,
all right. So I think that's gonna wrap up our review of the Clone Wars arc of season 7, episodes 1 through 3. So we'll be doing another episode of the Clone Wars once the next arc. I think they're all in 3-episode arcs. So right after that arc, we'll do another episode and review it and give you guys our thoughts. But other than that, check out our regular podcast, and our YouTube channel and all our podcast streaming services for more episodes. So until then, see you later, Podawans.
Let it.